Something happened to Brain sometime in the last 15 years. And Brain didn't notice because it happened slowly, one notification at a time, one open tab at a time, one podcast filling one commute at a time. Silence disappeared. Not the big dramatic silence of a mountaintop or an empty field. The small silence, the ordinary silence. The silence of waiting for something. The silence between conversations. The silence of a walk with no headphones. The silence of lying in bed before reaching for the phone. The silence of being in a room and just being in a room. That silence, the kind humans lived inside for thousands and thousands of years, is almost completely gone, and Brain filled every gap it left with something. Music, podcasts, videos, scrolling, notifications, noise. And Brain called this staying informed, being entertained, making use of the time. But something has been going wrong underneath all that noise. Something Brain can feel, but hasn't had the silence to actually hear. Today, Brain is going to find out what silence actually was, what it did inside Brain that nothing else can replicate, what Brain has lost by deleting it, and whether Brain can get any of it back. For almost all of human history, silence was simply part of life, not chosen silence, not a wellness practice, not something to schedule, just silence, unavoidable, ordinary, everywhere, waiting for fire to catch, walking between villages for hours, sitting at dusk with nothing to do but watch light leave the sky, long winters with short days, and nothing to fill the dark hours with, except thought. Sea voyages that lasted months with no entertainment except the sound of water and the inside of the mind, fields, forests, long roads, entire lifetimes built around hours and hours of uninterrupted quiet. Brain did not experience this silence as deprivation. Brain experienced it as normal, and inside that silence, without knowing it, Brain was doing something essential, something that cannot happen when the noise is always on. When Brain goes quiet, truly quiet, with no input competing for attention, something switches on. Scientists call it the default mode network. Brain calls it the place where the real thinking happens. The default mode network is not idle. It is not Brain doing nothing. It is Brain doing the things it can only do when everything else stops. Thing 1. Processing what happened. Every experience Brain has needs to be integrated, not just stored, integrated, turned from raw event into meaning, into lesson, into something Brain can use. This integration happens in the quiet spaces, the walk home after something difficult, the lying in bed before sleep, the sitting with nothing to do. In those moments, Brain was not wasting time. Brain was digesting life the way a body digests food. Quietly, slowly, out of sight, but absolutely necessary. Without that digestion, experiences pile up unprocessed. Events happen but don't become wisdom. Days pass but don't become understanding. Brain gets fuller and fuller of undigested life and wonders why it feels so heavy. Thing 2. Making connections. The default mode network is where creativity actually lives, not in the focused, on-task, productive brain, in the wandering brain, the unfocused brain, the brain that is staring at the ceiling, thinking about nothing in particular. This is where the unexpected connection happens, where two unrelated things suddenly become one insight, where the solution to the problem Brain has been pushing against for weeks quietly arrives while Brain is doing something else entirely. Archimedes in the bath, Newton under the tree, Einstein on a bicycle. These are not coincidences. The great insights of human history did not arrive during meetings. They arrived in the gaps, in the silence, in the unfocused wandering that modern Brain has almost completely eliminated. Thing 3, knowing what Brain actually wants. This is the one that costs the most. In silence, Brain hears itself. The real self, not the self that performs for others. Not the self that responds to demands, not the self that reacts to feeds and notifications, the self underneath all of that, the one that knows whether the life Brain is living is actually the life Brain wants, the one that notices when something is wrong long before Brain is ready to admit it, the one that carries the quiet dissatisfaction, the unexpressed longing, the slowly accumulating sense that something important is being missed. That voice speaks in silence, only in silence, and Brain has been very successfully not listening to it. Brain did not decide to delete silence. It was deleted in increments, each one feeling like progress, each one solving a real problem. The Walkman gave Brain music on the move. Silence on walks became optional. The car radio made commutes entertaining. Silence in transit became unusual. The internet gave Brain infinite content for every idle moment. Silence at home became uncomfortable. The smartphone put all of it in brain's pocket. Every second of potential silence became a potential scroll. And then the apps learned what brain clicked, learned what brain watched longest, learned what made brain reach back within minutes of putting the phone down, and they optimized for one thing only. Not brain's well-being, not brain's clarity, not brain's growth, engagement, which is a polite word for keeping brain's eyes on the screen for as many minutes per day as possible. The average person now touches their phone over 2,000 times a day. 2,000. And each touch is a tiny deletion of the silence that was there. Brain is not weaker than previous generations. Brain is not lazier. Brain is not less capable of focus. Brain is living inside the most sophisticated distraction machine ever built by human beings, designed by some of the smartest minds alive, optimized by algorithms that know brain's habits better than brain knows them itself, and pointed directly at every gap in brain's attention. Silence didn't disappear because brain gave up. Silence was taken while brain was looking at something more interesting. Brain is going to be honest here. This is the part that hurts a little. Loss 1. The ability to be alone with itself. Brain used to be able to sit, just sit, with nothing happening, and be okay. Now, 30 seconds of silence and brain reaches for the phone, instinctively, before brain even decides to. The movement happens before the thought, which means brain has been trained, by repetition, by reward, by design, to flee its own mind the moment nothing is happening. And a brain that cannot sit with its own silence is a brain that has become dependent on external input to feel stable. That is not a small thing. Loss 2. The processing of grief, difficulty, and change. Difficult things need silence to be absorbed, not talked about endlessly, not immediately distracted from, sat with, quietly, for as long as it takes. When brain lost someone, when something ended, when something failed, the old response, for thousands of years of human history, was to sit with it, walk with it, let it move through. Now brain distracts immediately, fills the silence before the feeling can arrive, scrolls past the grief, streams past the loneliness, podcasts past the emptiness, and the feeling, unprocessed, unintegrated, doesn't go away. It waits, in the body, in the tightness of the chest, in the restlessness at night when the phone is finally down, and the silence that brain has been avoiding all day arrives anyway. Loss 3. The long thought. There is a kind of thinking that requires uninterrupted time, not 10 minutes, not a focused work session between notifications, hours, sustained, wandering, building thought that goes somewhere only because brain stayed with it long enough to get there. Philosophy came from this, literature came from this, science came from this. Every great human idea came from a brain that had enough uninterrupted silence to think something all the way to the end. Brain today rarely thinks anything to the end. Brain gets 3 minutes into a thought and the phone lights up. Brain gets halfway through an idea and something more interesting appears. Brain starts to go somewhere and gets redirected, again and again and again, until brain forgets what it felt like to follow one thought all the way to where it wanted to go. Loss 4. The knowledge of what brain actually wants. This is the quietest loss, and the most expensive one. When brain is always consuming, always receiving, always reacting, always being told what to want, what to think, what to feel, what everyone else is doing, brain's own signal gets buried. The quiet knowing, this is right for me, this is not right for me, this is what I actually care about, this is what I am actually afraid of. That knowing requires silence to hear, and brain has been turning the volume up every year for 15 years until the quiet knowing can barely be heard over the noise, and brain moves through life reacting to what comes at it, instead of choosing what to move toward. Not because brain doesn't have direction, because brain has not had the silence to hear what that direction is. This is not just philosophical. Silence does something measurable inside brain. In 2006, a study published in the journal Heart found that 2 minutes of silence was more relaxing, measurably, physically more relaxing, than listening to relaxing music. Blood pressure dropped, heart rate slowed, cortisol decreased. 2 minutes of nothing, more powerful than the music brain has been using as a substitute. Studies on the brain's default mode network show that the brain during silence is not less active, it is differently active, processing emotional experiences, consolidating memory, strengthening the connections between different areas of the brain, building, in other words, the architecture of a coherent self. And studies on children raised in chronically noisy environments show measurable differences in cognitive development, attention span, and the ability to regulate emotion. Noise is not neutral, and its absence, silence, is not neutral either. Silence is not the absence of something. Silence is the presence of something brain needs and cannot manufacture from anything else. Brain is not going to pretend that the answer is simple. The machine that deleted silence is still running, still optimizing, still learning. Brain is not going to defeat it with willpower. Brain is going to need a practice, a return, not a dramatic transformation, not becoming a monk, not moving to the mountains, not deleting every app and living by candlelight, something much smaller, much more boring, much more powerful. Step 1. Put silence back into the tiny places. Not an hour, not a retreat, not a perfect morning routine. 10 seconds before unlocking the phone. 30 seconds before turning on music. 1 minute sitting in the car before getting out. The first bite of food without a video playing. The walk from one room to another without carrying the phone. These are not big moments. That is the point. Brain lost silence in tiny places. Brain gets it back in tiny places. Step 2. Let boredom happen. Boredom is not a failure state. Boredom is the doorway. It feels like nothing because brain has forgotten how to feel what comes after nothing. First comes restlessness, then irritation, then the urge to check something. Then, if brain does not obey the urge, something else appears. A memory, a feeling, a connection, a question. The beginning of a thought that was buried underneath the noise. Step 3. Make some parts of life unreachable. The phone does not need to be within arm's reach at all times. The bathroom does not need to be a content room. The bed does not need to be a cinema. The walk does not need to be a podcast studio. Some places have to become unavailable to noise again, protected, defended, every day, not to be productive in it, not to meditate perfectly, not to have insights. Just to be in it, without filling it. The discomfort brain feels in that gap. The urge to reach, to fill, to check. That discomfort is information. It is brain discovering how dependent it has become on noise to feel okay. And the only way through that discovery is to sit with it. Step 2. Stop treating silence as empty. Silence is not empty. Silence is full of something that cannot exist anywhere else. The thought brain hasn't finished. The feeling brain hasn't processed. The question brain hasn't asked itself yet. The answer that has been waiting for a quiet enough moment to arrive. Every time brain reaches for the phone to fill a silence, brain is choosing noise over whatever was about to happen in that quiet. Sometimes what was about to happen was nothing important, but sometimes it was exactly what brain needed. And brain will never know which one it was because brain filled it before finding out. Step 3. Walk without anything. Not with music. Not with a podcast. Not with a call. Just walking. Brain, body, world. At first, it will feel painfully empty. Brain will want to make it useful. Brain will want to fill it. Let the walk be useless. A useless walk is where useful things start appearing. Step 4. Leave the phone outside the room. Not forever, not for the whole day. Just for one room, one meal, one shower, one bedtime. The point is not discipline. The point is distance. Distance gives brain a chance to choose. A phone within reach is not neutral. It is an open door back into noise. Brain cannot build silence while the door to noise is always open. Step 5. Notice what arrives in the silence. When brain starts protecting its silence, even imperfectly, even inconsistently, something begins to happen. Brain hears a thought it has been avoiding. Brain feels a feeling it has been outrunning. Brain remembers something it needed to remember. Brain realizes it is tired, or sad, or angry, or lonely. Not because silence created those things, because silence stopped covering them. Silence does not always feel peaceful at first. Sometimes it feels like withdrawal, like brain is missing something, like something is wrong, like the room is too quiet. But that is not silence being dangerous. That is brain learning how much noise it was using. And slowly, if brain keeps returning, the silence changes. It stops feeling empty. It starts feeling spacious. It stops feeling like nothing. It starts feeling like room. Room for thought. Room for feeling. Room for memory. Room for choice. This is what brain lost. Not quiet as an aesthetic, not quiet as a lifestyle brand, quiet as a basic human condition, quiet as the place where brain becomes itself again. The world will keep getting louder. The machine will keep improving. The apps will get better at knowing exactly when brain is weakest, so brain cannot wait for the world to become quiet. Brain has to become the place where quiet is protected. Not perfectly, not constantly, just deliberately, again and again. A few seconds before the phone, a walk without input, a meal without a screen, a bedtime without the last scroll. These are small acts of rebellion against a system that wants every empty space filled. Every protected silence is brain telling the machine, not this part. This part belongs to me. Everything brain has been scrolling past is still there. Inside, brain, waiting for a quiet enough moment to be finally heard. Thoughts arrive that brain forgot it was having. Feelings surface that brain didn't know were waiting. Ideas appear from nowhere that were not nowhere. They were just waiting for the noise to stop. And slowly, beneath the noise brain has been living in, brain starts to hear something it has not heard clearly in a very long time. Its own voice, not loud, not dramatic, just honest. The voice that says, I am tired. The voice that says, I miss something. The voice that says, this is not what I want. The voice that says, this is where I need to go. This is what silence gives back. Not entertainment, not information, not stimulation, contact with life, with feeling, with itself. Brain does not need to disappear into silence forever. Brain only needs to visit it often enough to remember itself. A few seconds, a few minutes, a few protected gaps. That is how silence comes back. And when silence comes back, brain comes back too. Brain says thanks.